What's up, Spurs fans? And it's another edition of the pre-match build-up here with the American Hotspur here on Stateside Footy. A quick reminder, real quick, is to hit that like and subscribe buttons, and also the notification bell as well, so you don't miss out on any upcoming content. All right, so Spurs versus Brentford last year. Brentford was only one of two teams last year that we did the double against, and of course, it's a little extra special because our guy Thomas Frank, blah 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 blah. All right. So, anyways, let's just go ahead and jump into it because this match tomorrow against Brentford, man, is, to me, it kind of feels like a sticker twist moment for this football team. Things have not been progressing in the right way, the way that we should have from the start of the season. Of course, a month ago we were in third place. Now we're trending in the wrong direction, and I get it, right? Earlier this week, up at St. James's Park against a team like Newcastle, a team that didn't necessarily take advantage of the opportunities that were given, we were able to overcome a 1-goal deficit twice, and of course the second time around off one of the worst VAR decisions I think I've ever seen. And of course, VAR, by the way, is in place not to re-referee matches. It is there to either yay or nay. And the fact that they went back, good Lord, that just gets me completely fired up. But the fact that we were able to come back and get a result in a place where, generally speaking, we don't necessarily get results, that is, on the one hand, very good. On the other hand, we only managed 2 shots on net the entire match. And if it wasn't for Christian Romero, doing what a captain is supposed to be done, this would not have ended up the way that Spurs fans think that it would have. Quickly, Niall O'Connor. Big ups are going to be interesting tale of the set piece, or will Frank capitalize on Brentford's weaknesses? You hope. But the reality is quite simple. We are not trending in a good direction. Attacking wise, we're not even trending in a good direction defensive wise, and that is supposed to be the calling card. And we're going to talk a little bit about both sides of the ball here, and of course we're going to start on the attacking side of things. And Thomas Frank alluded to it in his press conference a couple days ago that they are not a direct attacking team. They are a possession based team. And unfortunately, it does not necessarily suit the personnel that he has on the pitch. When you kind of look at everything, if you take a step back and take a little emotion out of it, and you look at the strengths and the players of which they play, it would probably gear towards more of a direct attacking scheme. That being said, one of the things that I noticed in that match against Newcastle, the difference between Eddie Howe and a guy like Thomas Frank, and by the way, I want to preface this by saying that I'm not Frank in or out. I'm Tottenham in, right? I just want what's best for this club. But that being said, when I evaluate matches, I look at patterns, and that's all I do. That's just the dork in me. I'm, literally, dude, I'm a nerd at heart, and these are the things that I pay attention to. And it's interesting, whether it's on the counterattack or whether it is in the buildup. And when we do progress the ball from the back line to our 2 sets of midfielders, if we can actually get them into our two direct midfields to actually potentially link up into the upper midfield. The interesting thing is 2 things. Number one, the fact that we don't progress one of those midfielders high up the pitch. What we're seeing is defense is essentially making a box around the midfield too, because they're played so deep, very close to the back line. And what ends up happening is we can't necessarily progress balls forward. So where does the ball go? It goes wide, whether it's Destiny Udogie off the left or Pedro Porro. And because when teams press us high and they get that box in the midfield, there's only one direction the ball can go. It can't go in. It's either going to go back, or it's going to be a long ball down the pitch, right? And of course, that is also not going to be something that's going to trend in the right direction, because quite frankly, we don't necessarily have forward players at this moment that are very good in the hold up. And so from that standpoint, ball is lost, and your opponent keeps. possession. There are times where we mid-block and we're able to get the ball in what I like to consider soft areas. And we saw this a few times. Actually, we saw this a lot against Newcastle, where we have somebody drawing back to make a touch. And in this case, this is Papsar. He comes deep to make a touch, right? And so now what is the first reaction of a guy like Papsar? Off the half turn, you would like to see the ball progress forward, right? Because you want to go from soft spot to soft spot, right? You want to actually put a ball in an area where you're actually going to have space to move, whether it's again on the turn, move forward. Maybe you might hit an overlap, or maybe you actually might play one into the box. That's not what happens. Papsar comes down, makes a touch, and initially the ball goes two different directions. Either it goes to the side, or it's going to go completely back. And when you're playing against teams that know how to beat us, that's how teams beat us. They understand exactly what we're trying to do, how we're trying to do it. And oh, by the way, if all you have to do is apply the screw and apply that pressure to that back line, that ball is not going to go forward. It's going to go completely back to Vicario. And we start this cycle all over again. There's a reason why we continue to go first halves without shots on net, is because we're not progressing the ball forward. It's this weird transition where we're cycling between the back line, and we might move one step forward, but again, it's interesting too, because I also noticed some of these boxes as well too. As teams are pressing us, we notice that we can't get the ball inverted into a central area, so the ball just ends up going wide or it goes back. And so what ends up happening is we're stuck along the wings, and we can't progress the ball forward. And so from that standpoint, I guess the question relies as, well, what's the plan? Well, the interesting thing about it is, number one, I would probably assume that the best thing to do is probably get the ball onto the feet of the people the players that actually are good with the ball on their feet, which is better, which is easier said than done, because of the scope of the attack that we have. It relies heavily on crosses from wide areas, and so the question is how do you progress the ball up the field when defenses are keying into these soft spots, and we can't actually progress it into those areas because we're so hell bent on trying to find the right combination, whether it's a switch from one side or the other, to try to progress the ball forward. And when we do progress the ball forward, chances are that whole quadrant, whether it's on the right or the left-hand side, is going to be taken away. So we don't progress the ball into the box. The interesting thing is when we were playing against PSG, we were playing a little bit more direct. We were playing through more central areas, and we were able to move the ball up quick. And I don't understand the differential between playing a team like PSG and then reverting at home to a team like Fulham. And by the way, PSG actually had to work because we actually started from a position of strength. We started with two strikers in the box, higher up, and so we were able to link that because we actually didn't start from a position of weakness where if the ball is on Van de Ven or Romero's feet deep, and then playing the ball out to a wider position where we're trapped on each touchline, we actually sent a midfielder forward so defenses couldn't box in those two midfielders. We actually had one progress forward. Whether that was Papsar or whether that was Lucas Bergvall, we were able to play balls in a little bit higher up, and we were able to play around some of their pressing, and we were able to play a little bit more directly through central areas. And when that happened, we were able to get better positioning up the pitch in softer areas where we were able to take advantage of the fact that we had two in the box. And when we got numbers forward, then all of a sudden we had 4 or 5 in the box. And from that standpoint, we were able to get we were able to finish off attacking sequences and put the ball in the back of the net. That wasn't a set piece opportunity. Against Fulham, that didn't work. Against Fulham, we didn't do that. We reverted back to this this weird want of slowing things down and playing this high possession-based style of football that is not conducive to the personnel that we have. Period, point blank. And we did it again against Newcastle United, and we were lucky to walk out of St. James with a point. 100%. Dan Davenport says, what did I think about the FIFA World Cup draw? It was good. I feel bad for Scotland. I really do. I'll get onto that later. AK Shags, what's up, bud? And then let's see, random one. But more I watch Frank, the more I realize why Mbemo went to United. That's well. The interesting thing though is that, see, this is the differential between Brentford and Tottenham. This is the differential. Okay, he had 9 years at Brentford with a recruiting strategy that was tailored around his strengths as a coach. Like, I'll give you a good example, right? Like we're currently linked to, his name is Diamande from Red Bull Leipzig, right? And Diamande is the type of player that kind of plays, that kind of succeeds a little bit in a more possession-based offense, right? Don't get me wrong. Most players instinctually would prefer to play a more direct game. And especially, if we were still, playing in a, Mauricio Pochettino, Harry Redknapp, Terry Venables, what's his ass, Hoddle. If we were playing like the way that we used to play as a club, I'm sure these players would actually come good. I would probably assume that, but the interesting thing about Thomas Frank, it's the demand on how to play a specific style, but it's not just that; it's also positionally as well too. Like, he wants to keep wingers and backs wide. He wants to keep that width. And generally speaking, it's actually not a bad solution to have, because if you can progress and you can actually get your matchups on the wings, the more opportunity you have balls to play in, right? But at Brentford, they just, what's interesting is they just had better personnel over a period of time that actually fit the way that Thomas Frank wanted to play. Simple as that. And when you actually have 5 years with a good portion of your team, they're going to play the exact same way. They're going to play a very strong game, because they know exactly, especially on the pitch, they know exactly where, to hit soft zones early in matches and catch people flat-footed. And it worked quite well. But that being said, there's a lot of things that have translated from Brentford. Number one, shots on target. Brentford didn't take a lot of shots on target, and when they did, they were able to capitalize. And then also shots from outside on a defensive standpoint. They faced the most shots from outside. And again, it's just the way that Thomas Frank prefers to set up. But you're absolutely right. The interesting thing about it is, it's like, I'm not surprised that Mbemo didn't want to go to Spurs. If it was somebody else, we probably wouldn't. Let's see. My preferred midfield is Polinia, Bergvall, and Xavi. The interesting thing about Xavi, and maybe you guys agree, is that I actually think the system in which we play is not conducive to Xavi at all. When you think about the way that Red Bull Leipzig played, they either played a direct 4-4-2 or they played a 3-4-2-1. And Xavi was either up top in a 2, and he was playing as an off 9, or he was playing underneath a primary striker off the right-hand side, where he was able to play far more directly, whether it was off the wings or whether it was centrally. And he was able to use his feet with the ball at his feet, and it was either shots from the outside or 1-2s with a winger, and he was able to make inside-ed inverted runs to be able to put the ball in the back of the net. And that was one of the things that I absolutely loved about Xavi at Red Bull Leipzig, and I thought he was going to become absolutely great. But when you see the way that he's set up, and because we don't play a direct game, what we see is, again, because we keep our midfielders so deep, and when the ball comes out, and if we do progress it to the midway line, who's coming down to make the first touch? Who's coming down to make the first touch? It's Xavi. He's coming deep. You should never have Xavi coming deep to make a touch. That's why you have midfielders. It's the one thing that I love about Oliver Glasner is his attack is played through his two midfielders, Adam Wharton, and who's the other guy? It's mainly played through Adam Wharton, and from that they're able to go 3 ways right through the midfielder, and they're able to turn, whether it's on the counter up the half turn, they're able to play it forward, or they're going to be able to play it out wide. And from that, they're able to get matchups on either side of the pitch. It's a phenomenal way of playing. But that being said, it's one of the reasons why Florian Wirtz isn't working now for Liverpool, because he plays the exact same way. There is a specific style that is conducive to attacking players in the Bundesliga, and it's a reason why so often not a lot of them come to the Premier League and succeed. And it's not surprising that Florian Wirtz and Xavi Simons has struggled with their two teams, because when you look at the way that Arne Slot playing at Liverpool, and he scrapped what made them so good last season to play this high possession game where the ball moves, right? Like, they want to hold on the ball higher up the pitch, and it's in fairness, it's like if you're Pep Guardiola or you're Mikel Arteta, and you actually have the personnel in order to pull that off, it's like this weird tiki-taka style of football where it's like you want the ball to move because you want the defense to react to that ball movement. But if you don't have the players that, number one, are conducive to it, or two, that are actually good at doing it, you're going to have problems. And when you see Xavi coming down to make the touch, his first initial pass is either sideways or back so he can get back up forward. But then he doesn't move centrally. He stays off the left-hand side. So he's wide. He's out of position. And then usually when the ball does come back to him, he's either making an inverted run off to the far left of the 18-yard box, so he's still farther away from goal. Like, you need Xavi Simons within 8 feet of the goal centrally. Not, I hate to say this, not so fucking far out. And that's the problem. And again, it's a key element of the way that he wants to play. And the interesting thing is, when teams press the ball, even when they're higher up the pitch, where does the ball go? It doesn't go forward. It goes backwards. And we concede constantly, just keep conceding spaces. And we're never in a good position to actually, put a progressive shot on net. I mean, there is a reason why we only managed 2 shots on net against Newcastle. And it was because was Newcastle playing so good defensively? And it was like, no, dude, we're our own worst enemies. And I'm starting to wonder whether the players are kind of in that same weird space that they were in last year under Ange. And it wasn't because they didn't like Ange. It was, you're starting to wonder whether or not things are getting a little bit more complicated than they absolutely need to be. Players, and I can speak to this too, players tend to do better when things are easily simplified. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but put yourself in your work, right? I can tell you, my work days get convoluted when my boss throws 50 million different things at me. And the best days are when things are absolutely simple. And it's everything is straightforward, and there's no things coming at me 1,000 miles an hour. And I tend to have those best days. And I would probably assume that playing in a Thomas Frank attack can get complicated at some points, because you're wondering just exactly what your actual role is. Let's see. AK Sheds wouldn't be mad if it was Polina Gray Xavi. I wouldn't be mad with that either. I think Archie Gray is ready. to play more of a role in that Tottenham midfield. At this point, I would actually favor Archie Gray over Lucas Bergvall, because the one thing about Archie Gray is that he does not at all get phased under pressure. He never makes a bad pass under pressure. He never, ever allows that emotion to get the better of him. I absolutely love Archie Gray. Let's see. Glad you left out the AVB from the list of past managers. You know what's funny is I also left off Christian Gross as well too. Let's see. Niall O'Connor says 100% agree. But with that said, Frank literally needs time, and that's something this board might not give him. Here's the thing, right? Obviously we know if he was at Brentford, he would get time because there is no pressure. Unfortunately, he took a job with a Big Six club. And so unfortunately, and I don't know when this happened, right? Apparently we're like, if fans, I think fans care about heart and hustle more than they care about results. But I get the impression that even in a loss, if you're playing 100% out whistle to whistle, I think fans are going to be okay with that. Me personally, results absolutely matter. And that's why I started the show by saying this Brentford match could be the tipping point, because if we already know for a fact that we can't beat Bournemouth and we can't beat Wolves, like that's absolutely shocking. We can't beat Wolves and we can't beat Fulham. And if we can't beat Brentford, teams that we're supposed to pad our Premier League record on, that we're supposed to bank points against, there's going to be a problem, because there's going to be no faith that we're going to be able to do it against Nottingham Forest the week after, or even Slavia Prague in the midweek. I'm sorry, man. Let's see. Interesting. Could we use a false nine? I wouldn't say Xavi up top. I would say Xavi as a false nine. If you're going to play a two-striker, if you're going to play a 4-4-2 and you're going to be playing with a traditional striker with an off 9 and a 10, would it be out of the realm of possibility to see Xavi in that false 9 and maybe bring a little Kudus to the center of the pitch, maybe, or maybe reverse those two? But that being said, it's going to take Thomas Frank the ability to do that, and unfortunately, I just don't see that happening. He will play 2 up top. We've seen that the last couple times. Let's see. Yeah, Spurs players looking like they're thinking too much. Yeah, potentially. I got to run, but I want to go on the record that I've been the leader of the Matisse Tell fan club. Yeah. Listen, I like Matisse. And I think the skill set's there. He just needs time, just like everybody else. All the youngsters as well too. A lot of those guys just need time as well too, and that's something where I don't think Thomas Frank has the balls. I really don't. Right. One of the things that a guy like Matisse Tell, a guy like Wilson Odebear, who, to be honest, he has been given some time, but the Archie Grays and the Lucas Bergvall, in order for these guys to progress to meet their ceilings, they need time in the Premier League. And if the results continue to dip, he's not going to have the time. And I don't think, the reason why it worked for Mauricio Pochettino the first time around was, look at where we are as a club there, and look at where we're at now. We were coming off a nice little spell off of Harry Redknapp, and we finally got back into European play. But for the most part, we didn't have the new stadium. We didn't have the new training ground, and we weren't a part of what I would consider, the top 5 of the Premier League, right? So the pressure wasn't the same as it is now. And you look at what's happened over the last 5 years as we've been cycling through managers, and all that did was make the pressure even more rampant. And so we're at this weird crossroads. And again, I'm not blaming fans at all. Like you can, like if you feel like this is what you got to do as a fan, fair play, whatever, man. You're paying the ticket prices just like I'm paying the ticket prices. So it is what it is. Like you have the right to your opinion, right? But the reality is like results matter. Results really matter. And I was wondering how this fan base would act, I guess is the right word, after winning our first trophy in 18 years. Would there be a calming down period where it's like, okay, well, maybe we will give a new manager the time and space to build? And here we are now in December, and that's not happening at all because we're still inconsistent as a squad. And we're not like the week in and week out, we're getting a different version of this team. And again, a lot of it goes to either whether you feel it's the tactics or whether you feel it's rotation or whether you feel it's injury. The reality is, that's as me as a fan, that's where the frustration comes into, because I just want to see this team's identity come through, so we know from a week-to-week basis that we are going to get the exact same thing week in and week out. And then at that point, we can actually have a decent conversation about results, because eventually, obviously, he's going to be judged on his wins and losses. But one of the things that I can't outlook are the patterns of play in which we play. And there's certain patterns that every single week they are there, but also we get the hustle issues, and we get some of these other things that we just don't look the same week in and week out. Like 1 week we have a bad loss to Fulham, and then 3 days later he lets the handbrake go against PSG at the Parc des Princes, and we score 3 against actually what is a pretty goddamn good defense against PSG, Randall Colomoni scores a brace. It's the oddest shit I've ever seen. But that being said, it's like, I'm not surprised. Look at this club and look how we've overcorrected coaching changes, right? And it's like, can't you just get a coach that has the principles of the attacking style in which this club was built on, but it's also like defensively disciplined as well too, so you get the best of both worlds, right? That's why I think a lot of people agree that Mauricio Pochettino was good for this club, because his attacking philosophy is in a lot of ways replicated of what to dare to do means, and the things that Spurs fans historically have loved about attacking football. But he was also principled in his approach with defense. And he cleaned that up after the first year as head coach. Let's see. Agree. His attitude is top, considering being dropped from Europe and doesn't start games. Yeah, that tells a lot. No pun intended. It's funny. I would much rather see Tell get minutes than Odebear. Except Matisse Tell is not a left winger. That's the biggest problem. And there's a reason why we haven't seen, that was the wild thing about Ange Postecoglou, is he looked at Matisse Tell and saw his speed. And that it's the same thing that, by the way, I hate to say this, it's the same thing that ruined Timo Werner. He wasn't a winger. The only reason why he was played on the wing is because of his speed. It's the same thing with Matisse Tell, right? And when we got to look at Matisse Tell through the door last January, and I think he started a couple games up top. I think he had that goal against Aston Villa in the FA Cup, but the reality was it didn't look like he was ready to be a striker in the Premier League. And so what did Ange Postecoglou do? Moved him out left. When Richarlison came back, where was he played? Primarily out left. These guys are not left wingers. They don't have the left foot to cross into the box. At least Matisse Tell has a left foot, and it's still an unfinished product, but at least you're going to potentially get progressive crosses in the box from a dude like Matisse Tell. Not Matisse Tell, but Wilson Odebear, which you're not going to get from a guy like Matisse Tell. The reality is, like, if we were playing in a 4-2-3-1 narrow, where you were going to see long diagonal runs into the box off the left side, a la like what Sonny used to do. I would probably think maybe you might be able to get away with a guy like Matisse Tell, but we just don't play that way. The problem with Ange Postecoglou, and it's the same problem with Thomas Frank, is he likes his wingers to hug the touchline. And it's like if you keep players like that away from goal, you're going to continue to have problems. And that's the long and short of it, right? It's like, that's why I don't like the way that Xavi's played, is because the farther away from goal that he gets, the worse of a player he is. And all that's going to do is fuck him up mentally. And then we're going to start talking about, confidence issues and things like that. And now all of a sudden we're going to start talking about whether or not like we wasted money on Xavi signings. And there's also going to be a talk about whether or not Spurs ended up ruining Xavi's career. Much like I always have conversations of, when I do get asked about Timo Werner, I'll say the same thing. Chelsea fucked his career over too. But that being said, it's like with a guy like Xavi, he has to be within 10 feet of goal for him to be effective. He has to make inverted runs through the central part of the area, and he has to be played onto the ball, but he also has to be in areas where he can use his feet in 1v1 situations to play in or play around. That is when he is at his strength. And keeping him away from goal is just going to make him so goddamn fucking worse. All right, let's see. Let's see. I would like to see them both in the squad. They play together in the under-21. There's Adrian. What's up, man? Oh, this is Luke. Spotlight on Spurs. Love it, Luke. Good to see you, buddy. And he says he 100% agrees. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, what's funny is, like, on the other side of the coin, one of the crazier things that I've noticed, especially when it comes to patterns defensively, is that we're committing guys. We're not holding our shape. Not only are we playing deep, right? That's the first thing I've noticed defensively as well too. It's like because we're playing from a deep position, that means when the ball gets turned over, we're still in a deep position, which means our midfielders are actually on top of the 18-yard box, which gives them so much space to progress the ball. But that being said, when you also notice balls going into central areas, or you see balls going over, we'll see one of the center backs commit forward, leaving outside backs alone, 1v1. And of course, in that Newcastle game, how many times did Pedro Porro get burnt, right? But the other thing is, because of that, and we commit guys forward, we lose our shape, and now all of a sudden, a good quadrant of the box is only being manned by one person, which means crosses come in, which means balls can get played through, and we're conceding goals. It's an interesting thing too, and I wonder, I wonder if when we're seeing center backs commit to go forward because they're worried about, they're trying to close down space, or they're worried about a certain player not taking a shot from the outside, knowing there's going to be a pass to the outside. I remind you of Chukwueze, which was Chukwueze also played well against us as well too. You wonder if that is instinct or whether he's being told to do it. I would probably land on it was instinct. Because again, one of the things that happens when you're under pressure, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're switching off. I just think when you're under pressure, and also understand, because we don't score goals and we don't put shots on, the requirement for this defense is to be perfect. If you're in a position where you're literally told to keep the match at 0-0 for 60, 70 minutes until we actually get in a position where maybe we're actually going to be brave and get forward and try to nick a goal or something like that, you're going to end up making mistakes, right? In order to win a football game, both sides actually have to be keyed in. And the interesting thing about this is, again, we start from such a deep position. we start from midway through the 18-yard box, and because we don't progress through the middle of the pitch, when we get caught deep on the wings, it is tantamount to turning the ball over. And then all of a sudden, it's either a scramble to get back, or they just know exactly where to throw it in. Where to pass it into a soft area that gets guys to fight and commit. And then obviously it's a pass in, and now there's 1-2 runners, and all of a sudden now we actually have to try to hold our shape down a man, and maybe we actually get a block on it. Maybe it goes out for a corner, but most of the time, in the case of Newcastle, that ball that Bruno Guimaraes scored, Jesus Christ, was that dude open? The goal that Fulham scored with Kenny Tete, that whole right side was completely wide open because we bit to the left. And the only guy to get in front of it was Destiny Udogie. There you go. Niall O'Connor says, does VDV get benched tomorrow? Nope. By the way, VDV is our vice captain. He's not getting benched. He's actually, if you ask me, VDV probably right now is one of our best center backs in form. VDV just doesn't make mistakes. And then if he does make a mistake, he has the pace to get back and correct that mistake. Unless Thomas Frank thinks VDV is gassed, no. But yeah, that's the interesting thing. It's one of the things that there's like a few tweaks that can actually work. And it's, especially if we're playing out of the back, it's don't keep Betancourt and Polina so deep, and don't progress one up the pitch, right? That's the thing. It's like when, because Thomas Frank holds them in that central area deep, we have no choice but to play it wide. And because we don't play the ball long on goal kicks, I mean, we do, but not enough where it makes defenses think. So what's going to end up happening is teams are going to play us deep anyways because they're going to press the ball. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to turn it over. They're trying to get that turnover in our zone. And so what ends up happening is because we keep two midfielders so goddamn deep, the first play is to the outside, whether it's Pedro Porro or whether it's Destiny Udogie. And then you see that outside defender play in and leave the winger and draw in. And then all of a sudden, that lane is cut off on both sides. And so you see Pedro Porro play it deep, and it's like a Hail Mary shot down the pitch. It's like usually it's into Richarlison. And by the way, that's always 1v2. And Richarlison loses that battle 100% of the time. And so now we're turning the ball over. Instead of doing it in our half of the field, we're doing it in theirs. But they get to set up, and of course, their first initial pass is forward. Keeping one midfielder forward, whether that's Polina or Gray, depending on which side of the ball you're going to play it. Now all of a sudden you have a different outlet. You don't have to play it. You can actually progress it up the pitch a little bit, which allows Porro to get forward. Because once that ball goes, the defender has to disengage, and that allows Porro to get forward. And depending on who he's playing against, is the ability to get inside your man to actually progress that ball forward. But that's not happening. We don't create outlets to relieve the press. That's like one of the biggest things that, defensively speaking, or attacking, it's plaguing this team. It's one of the biggest reasons why we don't get shots on net, because we're not progressing the ball to an area where we're actually going to be able to set up. You know what I mean? And then when we do try to play it forward, to a guy like Kudus, he's already blanketed by a man. He's usually blanketed by the outside back that's defending, and then by the time the ball actually comes down to Kudus's feet, there's two men on the ball, and it's either he has to progress it back, he has to make a dangerous pass into the midfield, which is going to get turned over, or he's going to have to guard it and try to
See if his defender is going to play it out for a throw. And again, I say all this because, again, I'm not 100% Thomas Frank out. I don't necessarily think that. I don't necessarily think it's fair, but I also recognize that life isn't fair. And what I will say is that Brentford tomorrow is going to run the same blueprint Fulham ran. They're going to play the same blueprint that Chelsea ran, that Arsenal ran, and they're going to know exactly how to play this team. And it's going to be interesting to see if Thomas Frank has the ability to adjust, because he's going to have to do something. And the interesting thing is, last year we got some good results against Brentford home and away. And eventually it's going to have to turn, because if we drop this tomorrow, we're in a bad situation. We are in a very bad situation. And unfortunately, there might be a situation where come the 1st of January, we have ourselves a different manager. I hate to be the one to say it, but it's true. It's true. I don't think he lasts this. And it's not because that Thomas Frank is a bad coach. It's just that Thomas Frank put himself in a situation where he had to hit the ground running with this team. Like, can you guys answer me this question? Did we even get the new manager bounce? Because, that's the interesting thing. Like, when Ange Postecoglou came in, I think we reeled off 8 of our first 10. Like, we got a definite bounce. Like, I'm trying to think if this is actually considered a new manager bounce. That first month, was that a new manager bounce? Yeah, I guess it kind of was. But the reality, it didn't necessarily seem like one. But the reality is, it's like, that's my biggest worry. And especially against Brentford, who, by the way, aren't exactly the greatest team in the Premier League. But that being said, if you understand how to press Spurs into mistakes, we're not going to progress up the pitch to be put in a situation where we're going to take shots on their defense. There's a good chance that for a good 60 minutes of tomorrow's match, their back line and their goalkeeper is not even going to be tested. That's my biggest fear. And that unfortunately is not a winning recipe for a manager. It's the reason why Slot at Liverpool, there's a reason why that he's being whispered as getting the sack, because he radically changed what was working at Liverpool. Like, his greatest asset at Liverpool was understanding the players that he had and the way that they were playing was conducive to winning the league. And he made minor tweaks last season, very minor tweaks, but he still kept his counter-pressing team because he had strikers that played well off the counter press. And of course, he kept Mo Salah higher up the pitch. He didn't require Mo Salah to come back and track back on defense. He just kept him higher up the pitch to preserve his energy and also be a little bit more attacking minded. And then he moved Ryan Gravenbroch into the midfield, and it worked out well. For the most part, last year Liverpool stayed compact, but they were also a very hard-working, very hard-running, counter-pressing team, and they ran away with the league. And then he switches this offseason. He switches. And again, instead of introducing small little bites to get your players used to it, and then at the same time potentially switching personnel to kind of match it, it's like, we're just going to rip this out of the playbook, and here's what we're doing. And, it's going to take a while for your players to adjust. Liverpool is certainly not adjusting to it well, and Spurs aren't adjusting to Thomas Frank. And it's like, it's interesting. Like, you would think that you would want to do like the travel the path of least resistance in your first year, play to the strengths of the players that you have, and slowly introduce your ideals. And maybe you make a tweak here and there, but overall, you're just going to keep overall harmony, and you're just going to play to the strengths of your players and just get forward, get direct, and put the ball in the back of the net. We'll see, man. Let's see, Georgie Gregorzino. Does Porro get a rest tomorrow? He's looking mentally fatigued. I would agree with that, but I guess the question is do you have faith in Jed Spence? That's my biggest question for you. That's the question. Do you have faith in Jed Spence, right? Like, he is better as a left-sided fullback, considering that he spent the last year and a half, 2 years training on the left side. Like, do you put him in at right fullback? I don't know. Like, we saw him a couple times on the right side. Didn't necessarily play all that well. Let's see. Any manager would have the same issues. We don't have a winning squad right now. I would say that Randall Colomwani, Xavi, Caduce, João Palhinha, Romero, Van de Ven, Vicario is a very good spine of a team. Like, me personally, I think that I actually think that's actually not a bad spine. I just don't think they're being played right. And you're asking what are the strengths of the players we have? Well, just look at the way, look at when those players were at their peak and when they were playing best, they were playing in a very direct system. That means strikers were being played on, either played on the ball from wide areas to the middle, or they were being played on the ball from middle parts of the pitch. And they were also when wingers did progress, they were able to get good progressive crosses into the box that made it worth their while. That's the thing. It's like they weren't playing in necessarily high possession based, move the ball around and try to take advantage of defenses. They were playing in very direct systems that use their pace, that use their strength, and took advantage of mismatches. They took advantage of channels. Randall Colomwani, when Randall Colomwani was great in Germany, when he was good with Juventus. Well, to begin with, at Juventus, they played a little bit more of a direct game. Now, don't get me wrong; they still played possession-based football, but the first touch was always going forward, and it necessarily wasn't going backwards, right? So those teams necessarily weren't conceding space like Spurs are conceding right now. And so from that standpoint, they weren't asked to come deep to make touches. They were just asked to stay forward and do what they do best, which is utilize space, 1v1, and progress the ball forward. So it's the same thing when Xavi was in Germany and when he was playing at Red Bull Leipzig. They were either playing a 3-4-2-1 and he was on the right side underneath the primary 10, or they were playing 4-4-2. And he was literally played on the ball. And he was able to get in good space to beat his man 1v1 and play balls in, or he was underneath taking shots from inside the 18, putting it on net, or even progressing even closer to put the ball in the back of the net. Like, Xavi was phenomenal. And I hate to be the one to say it, but if he actually ended up at Chelsea playing for Enzo Maresca, he would know exactly where to play that dude and how to get the best out of him. And again, this is not an indictment on Thomas Frank, but I would say that to your point, I would say that the personnel that Spurs have currently, it's not bad. I would like, like, it's funny because I was talking with Dave Harris about this. And I was telling him, I was like, if there's any team in the Premier League that should be playing 4-4-2, it's Spurs, because they have the personnel to match. They probably could be able to do it. It's funny because when I think about it, right now, it's like, it's funny because if you were playing like, and especially if you were playing through one of your midfielders, right? So if you were playing 4-4-2 and you were able to use a guy like Betancourt or Palhinha to kind of play with a back, if you're playing from that side and you were playing forward and you were able to progress that ball forward and you had different avenues to play forward to Caduce down the right-hand side or in, and you had Xavi on the outside, on the other side of that midfield line, but you had him running towards this, the side, that ball can progress forward. And now you have Xavi running. You're actually playing that weighted pass. You're playing that weighted pass forward. And now all of a sudden you have three different outlets from that side, whether it's down the right-hand side, because the defender's going to have to draw in. So home dude, Kudus, is going to be open on the side, or you can actually play it. You can play it in because you're going to have one guy cutting in, and you're going to have your other other midfielder coming in as well too. So you're going to have far more different ways where you're going to be able to play direct, and you're going to have 2 in the box. You're either going to have one drop deep, or you're going to have Xavi Simons either playing a in, and he's going to run to the outside and he's going to work his way into the box, or you can play it direct out wide, and all of a sudden now Kudus is spraying balls into the box. Just a thought. I would love to see this team play 4-4-2. Actually, with a manager that knows how to play 4-4-2. Just saying. All right. So here's the thing. What I'm going to say is Brentford versus Spurs. I want to see, tomorrow specifically, I want to see if Thomas Frank is going to be able to adjust. Because if there's any one team that knows how Thomas Frank is going to want to play, it's going to be Brentford, right? So and Keith Andrews, correct me if I'm wrong, Keith Andrews was on his staff last year, right? So he understands exactly the tactics in which Thomas Frank wants to play. And so this is an opportunity for Thomas Frank to do 2 things. Show, number 1, he can adjust, and number 2, is he willing to take the handbrake off this team against a team like Brentford? And if he can do that, Spurs win, because I think we have a little bit better personnel. If he doesn't, and he is continuously trying to play this way, and we're putting in a position where we're wasting halves, because again, we've wasted first halves quite a bit over this last month, where we're not progressing into good spaces, we're not challenging defenses or keepers, and we're essentially just going into the half playing for 1 goal some point in the second half. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. By the way, I agree with you 100%. That was the selling point on Frank, that he makes adjustments. But the interesting thing is, his adjustments mid-game, have they worked? At times, sure. Over the last month, not so much. But that's the thing. It's like, this is like, to me, this is why Brentford is like I guess you can say the Alamo, or the litmus test, right? Because again, couldn't beat Bournemouth, couldn't beat Wolves, couldn't beat Fulham, couldn't beat teams that you're supposed to pad your points on, right? Like, if this team wants to be a top 6 team, it has to beat these teams. 100%, they have to beat these teams. But that being said, Brentford is a team that knows Thomas Frank. And if he can adjust and make a few tactical changes that allows his team to get forward, and he's able to take the handbrake off, we win. Because I think our forward players are a little bit better than their defenders. But that being said, if he doesn't, and we are pressed, continuously pressed, their midfielders and their attackers are going to be disciplined, and they're going to be in the right areas. And the question is whether Vicario is going to be that type of player, especially because he can be beat from the outside. But that being said, especially if they know how to overload and get some of our defenders to bite, there's going to be open players in the box for Brentford. And if he doesn't adjust, we're going to end up losing this match. And at that point, it's like at that point, it's like, if the Tottenham board decide to make the switch, it is what it is. And again, I don't want to say Frank out. I'm just saying that it is what it is, right? This is football. And you have to consider that we cannot allow our season to get out of hand. Right? That is the reality of it, right? The one thing that we do not want to do is put ourselves in the position we were last year, where we're hoping that 3 teams are just even worse. You know what I mean? Like, we had 38 points last year and we should have been relegated. Typically speaking, we should have been relegated last year. But there was 3 teams that are like, we don't want to be in that position this year. And so that means if this is a new front office, and if this is a new ownership group that is committed, they're going to do what they have to do to save their season, because they cannot be in a position where relegation comes into conversation. This is Tottenham Hotspur. This isn't Southampton, where they've been circling the relegation drain for 50 years. We're not that team. So from that standpoint, tomorrow is actually kind of a big game. I'm not going to say it's a must win, but it's a necessary win for Thomas Frank. So I guess from that standpoint, the question is who wins? I'll give you my starting 11 real quick, and I'll tell you who wins. My starting 11 is going to be Vicario. I think it's going to be I want it to be a 3-4-2-1, but it's going to be we're gonna play as a 3-4-1-2. That's how it's going to look like. It's going to attack. So I'm going to go Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, Udogie, Polinia, Gray, Xavi, Kudus. Let's see. 3-4. So yeah, it's going to be a double pivot of Gray and Polinia. Yeah, so it's going to line up as a 4-2-3-1. So yeah, it's going to be Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, Udogie, and then it's going to go Polinia, Gray, Xavi in the middle, and then it's going to be Kudus, Colomwani, and Richarlison. And they'll play with two. They'll play with two. And it's almost going to look, and it's weird because it's probably going to end up looking like a 4-2-2-2. So that's my starting 11. I think Richarlison and Colomwani end up up top. It's just the way it is. And as for a score, as for a score line, and here's the thing, man. I hate picking against my team to lose. But this team has not played well over the last month and a half. The last time that they were convincing in the Premier League was against Leeds. Like really convincing. Let's be real. They haven't looked convincing in the Premier League since Leeds, and that was on the road. Haven't looked good at home at all. So from that standpoint, I'll go for a 2-2 draw. That's where I'm thinking. But that's going to do it for me, guys. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's at home. So quick reminder before you go to make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, and also hit the notification bell, because tomorrow we have the Hotspur watch along as Spurs take on Brentford. So I will be doing that game tomorrow on top of the MLS Cup final, Vancouver versus Miami, Thomas Muller versus Leo Messi. So that's going to be at about it's going to be 2:30 Eastern. I believe that's going to be 8:30 p.m. UK time as well too. So big day tomorrow, 2 big live streams, and I hope you guys are going to be there for it as well too. And in about 30 minutes, I'll also be on Spurs Diehards TTID with Adrian and all those guys. So I'll be around. I'll be around tonight as well as tomorrow. So I hope to see you then. Again, hit that like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good night.